recently there's a poll from CNN ORC International about who's at fault for the IRS so-called scandal and the targeting of Tea Party groups. 47% of Americans said that it was directed by the White House, and only 49% say that the IRS acted on its own. So now there's been no evidence to that effect whatsoever, right? Now there's evidence that something went awry, that there was people were put in a category like Tea Party groups, and then they were audited, and they all, by the way, were passed in flying colors. No one was denied.
No, let me. The audited thing. That's not the case that they were audited. People are applying for special exemption to taxes and to keep their donors private, and they weren't audited. This is a you opt into this process. You can actually not even get that status and then file your taxes afterwards if you're one of those groups. But people like the status because it allows you to go to donors and say, we can keep your name secret now. We can guarantee that to you. Whereas if you give us the money and we try and file later and there's a problem, we can't guarantee that.
So if you file through that process, you must be looked into.
Yes, every single person, an entity that files that goes look through that. There are some, but you're getting so many. I mean, you're just thinking about it as college admissions, right? Nobody likes the idea that maybe one college is weighing SATs more than another college or something like that. But they need to do some process because they get so many admissions. Well, this is just basically the opposite of that. We're going to have a cutoff line. We're going to create certain tiers that we're going to look at because we're getting an influx of these certain applications, and these need more scrutiny. The fact of the matter is in 2010, there were a lot of people who were running as Tea Party candidates. So if you see that name there, the Tea Party is a relatively new phenomenon. It may be clumsy. I'm not even convinced of that. I think it was probably the most efficient way to look at these things. Well, you're getting a huge rash of these things. And all you're doing is you're providing them with extra scrutiny because they are identifying themselves in the same way that people who are promoting candidates, which they should not be doing. At least 51% of their work should not be electoral. And in fact, the law is written that none should be, but leave that aside for a moment. And then none of those people were denied the status they were seeking.
So, except of course a liberal group in Maine.
Yes, but
not related
that's not
to
what the issue is.
So okay, it's about to get better, right? So now, Darrell Issa, who's the head of the committee investigating this in the House, who's a Republican from California, says, look, we can't have any of this witness testimony leaking because then other witnesses can coordinate their testimony. Now, that seems actually very fair, right? And I get that. So now, here's the other problem, though. He starts leaking the testimony. And
selectively.
In fact, yeah, and it's not a secret. He invites reporters, and he says, I'm going to show you only a certain portion of the interview or the transcript. Now, Representative Cummings, who's the top Democrat in the committee, says, what are you doing? Well, you're not showing him the whole testimony. You're only showing the parts that you like, and it's a drip, drip, drip to make Obama look bad. Well, either we're going to show the testimony or we're not going to show the testimony. Right. And Issa says, oh, shut up, I don't give a damn. Instead, I'm going to keep on leaking this, okay? So Cummings says, finally today, yeah, I don't think so. Now, I warned you over and over again not to do that. So here's the entire testimony, okay? Now, what do we find out in the testimony? Turns out the guy in charge was an IRS official named John Schaefer, who identifies himself as a conservative Republican. And he says, I did this because I didn't want all the different Tea Party applications going to different branches, and it would be really inefficient to the point that Sam was making. So I wanted them all to get categorized and come to me, and then I would make that system a little bit more efficient. In other words, it was just a way of categorizing. There was no plot. There was no coordination with the White House. No. There was no targeting of Tea Party groups. If John Schaefer, a conservative Republican, had targeted them, well, then he would have denied them. But he didn't deny any of them.
No.
Let me quote here from the story. Throughout much of the interview, and there's 200 pages of Schaefer's interview, Schaefer describes the mundane bureaucratic challenges of dealing with incoming applications for nonprofit status. He said his team flagged the first Tea Party application because it appeared to be a high-profile case. And he wanted to make sure all high-profile cases received similar attention, almost word for what Sam was saying and has been saying all along, okay? Now, Schaefer himself says, what I'm talking here is that if we end up with 4 applications coming into the group that are pretty similar, and we assign them to 4 different agents, We don't want 4 different determinations. It's just not good business. It's not good customer service.
That's right.
So then they ask him a question. And then, by the way, Issa knows all of this. It was his committee. He knows that Schaefer said this weeks ago, but he's been on TV in the meanwhile saying, the Obama administration, I'm convinced, is part of this.
Look.
So let me do the question and answer on that. Quote, do you have any reason to believe that anyone in the White House was involved in the decision to screen Tea Party cases? Schaefer, I have no reason to believe that. Question, do you have any reason to believe that anyone in the White House was involved in the decisions to centralize the review of Tea Party cases? Schaefer, I have no reason to believe that. It was never a scandal in the first place.
Absolutely. And the slow walking of this was the big giveaway that it was not a scandal. Because Issa et al. Decided this is good for us. The narrative fits nicely. We already have a lot of paranoia and dislike of the IRS. You know, you didn't need to go far to find Tea Partiers talking about the jackbooted thugs in the IRS. And it just fit in nicely. And, you know, and their slow walking of it was, we don't got much here. Let's spread it out as much as we can. You know, like we've all stretched stuff. And when you got thin gruel, you just sort of drag it out. And, you know, listen, and I frankly wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't a coordinated effort in some respects to test this apparatus. And frankly, we have a statute that says they should not be engaged in politics. I think we should have far fewer of these 504c3 groups. We should allow no politicking whatsoever. If you're going to be anonymous donors, then you can't be involved in electing people because, you know, we don't know who's giving money. It could be the Chinese, right?
Those are the one people we can't spy in on. The people who are actually buying our politicians.
Indeed.
And when you go to a local reporter like Jennifer Grove, who got these bits of information in Cincinnati, she said, certainly it extends the shelf life of the story, keeps us nibbling at it.
Yes,
it's
of
done
course.
on purpose. And even Republican Senator Rob Portman from Ohio said, come on, let's see everything. Let's see it all. And I love that Cummings was like, enough of this BS. I'm done with this. Here's the real testimony.
Yeah.
And here's what happened. And by the way, how incompetent is the Obama administration that they didn't find this guy on the second day and put him on national television? What is wrong with you? You let this story fester for all this time, and now people are set in their minds. 47% of the country is absolutely convinced not only that it was a scandal, but that you did it. Why? Because you didn't fight back.